My name is Bhavuk Jain.
Итак, меня зовут Бахук Джан,
With HackerOne. I'm also a
и я
senior data science
представляю
and founder at StackTrace.
компанию StackTrace.
I'm also among top hackers for Meta and Yahoo in the past.
И я в прошлом работал с Yahoo и целым рядом других проектов.
So today agendas in it will be
Это программа моего выступления, то, о чем мы будем говорить. Поговорим о том, что такое Firebase,
and
что отличает сервисы.
how iOS and Firebase backend communication takes place, and then we will explore the exploits around it. So what is Firebase? So Firebase is an app development platform provided by Google. It helps developers to build iOS, Android, and web applications quickly, and it provides web-based, cloud-based tools that eliminate the need for a back-end infrastructure. It is also used by multiple Fortune 100 companies as well as many startups. So what are the key benefits? First is it has a fast integration. So Firebase provides easy to set up SDKs for web and mobile, including both Android and iOS. Second is a scalable backend. So it handles everything from authentication to real-time databases. Third, it's reliable because it is backed by Google's infrastructure. And fourth, not the least, versatile. It supports rapid prototyping. If you're building an MVP, people do like it because it's rapid. And it also helps in full-scale production apps as well. Now we will be discussing what are the different services offered by Firebase. The first one is real-time database and Firestore. So Firebase has their own cloud-based NoSQL database, and it syncs on real-time. Second is authentication. So it provides functionality to log in with email, phone number, social logins, login as anonymous. Third is cloud storage. So if you want to store documents, images, or videos on the cloud, you can use the cloud storage functionality. Next is multi-tenancy support. So if there is if an application wants to have multiple clients, tenants, and they want to isolate the data, they can use multi-tenancy functionality in the Firebase applications. Next is the cloud functions. These are the serverless backend logic, and they're triggered by Firebase events. Next is the analytics and Crashlytics. So it's really important for mobile applications to understand when the crashes are happening and what are the root causes. So they can leverage analytics and Crashlytics for it. And last but not the least is the hosting. It's used for hosting fast, secure web and static content. So these are not the only services provided by Firebase. These are a few things that I found vulnerabilities on. So I will be discussing only on those parts. But there are certain new tools as well, like they are doing on AI as well, but we will not be discussing that. So iOS and Firebase communication. So in this talk, I am discussing about iOS, but it works similarly in Android and web applications as well. So here we will try to understand how an iOS app communicates with the Firebase backend. So typically, if you want to understand if an iOS application is actually using Firebase, we take out the IPA, and in it, there is a file called as Google service-info.plist. It's embedded inside the application itself. So this is a property list file which contains critical key value pairs, and they are necessary to make communication with the Firebase backend services. Also, Firebase provides their own SDKs, both on Android, iOS, and web, that you can integrate within the iOS app, and that will utilize this Google service-info.plist file and communicate with the Firebase backend. So this is how Google service -info.plist file looks like. There are multiple information key value pairs. So the ones we are mostly interested in are the API key, API_key. So it is used to authenticate requests to Firebase services. Second is the project ID. So this is a unique identifier for the Firebase project associated with the app. Third is the storage bucket. So this points to the cloud storage bucket where we can store our documents, images, or videos. The last thing is the database URL. This specifies the endpoint accessing real-time databases, or which we call the Firestore backend. Now, let's see some of the exploits. So these exploits are the misconfigurations done by the developers while they are integrating this SDK. There are no issues in the Firebase itself that I'm discussing, except one, which we'll be talk about later on. First, exploit number 1. Unintended user sign-up to the application via alternate path. So generally, in web and mobile applications, they generally have their own APIs that they use to sign up a user or log in a user. There can be various of reasons. For example, they have their own custom authentication like SAML or OAuth, and they want to integrate Firebase with it, so they have their own APIs. But if we look at this Firebase endpoint, which is the /view and /account signup, and we provide the API key that we recovered from the plist file, we send it, and with any email and password, we get the ID token, which is the authentication token, which we can use to log into the account. Another interesting thing is if the application is not supporting email and password login, they are using phone number or a social login, we can leverage this API, and using email and password, we can actually create a new user. And this will give us an ID token, which is an authentication token for this particular email. Of course, it is not a validated email, but yeah, we can leverage it in the other exploits. So this is the starting point of all the exploits that I'm discussing today. So yeah, let's go further. So this is the vulnerable request. So you just need to update the API key, which we can get from the plist. And this is the request body. Exploit number 2, account takeover in multi-tenancy Firebase applications. So in the previous one, we discussed how any user can sign up to the application, right? Here, we can do the similar thing. So in the same API, Firebase also provides another parameter called a tenant ID. So generally, if the application is an enterprise application, they generally have multiple tenants. So if a user exists on tenant A, they have a different login, and on another tenant, they need to create another sign up for the same user to log in. So that's what we can exploit over here. So let's consider there are two tenants, tenant A and tenant B. And there's a victim testing@testing.com who is registered on tenant A. And as an attacker, now I want to take over the user account on tenant A. What we can do is we enter the tenant B ID over here in the tenant ID parameter, and we use the same email of the victim. The attacker uses their own password, and they will get an ID token again for the same user, but it's on tenant B. So it's safe, right? But what happens is the attacker can use the same ID token and send it to the affected vulnerable website and use it to take over the account on tenant B. So it turns into an account takeover. So this is the vulnerable request, similar to the previous one, but here you are also sending a tenant ID parameter in the request body. So why it happens? So the funny part is it's mentioned on the documentation provided by Google. So if you want to verify if a tenant belongs to tenant A and tenant B, you need to have this if statement. If this if statement is not there, you can actually bypass the authentication. And if you provide any tenant ID, ID token, it will accept it and it will log into the user. So, yeah. Exploit number 3, access to accounts with pre-configured mobile numbers with fixed OTPs. So Firebase has provided a few functionalities for the developers to make their development easy. So they provide, so if the application is using login with phone number, they can use a pre-configured mobile number and with a custom OTP. So they can just enter that phone number, the hard-coded OTP, and they will get access to the application. So if you go to the Firebase console, you will find they are the test phone numbers that you can add. And you can actually use these numbers to take over the developer's account. So there can be issues with it. So sometimes the application stores credit card information that are used by the developers. So they can be leveraged. Another thing is there can be sensitive information in the web or mobile applications that can also be leveraged because it's a developer account. Exploit number 4, access to storage files on Firebase. So this is the particular endpoint, /vo/b/the storage bucket.aspot.com. And in the authorization, we use Firebase and the ID token that we get it from the sign-up endpoint. And if it's not configured properly, we can dump the whole storage files on the server. It can be it can be photos, videos, private documents, everything. So this is a vulnerable request. Here you need to update the storage bucket again from the plist file. And in the authorization, you need to use the ID token that we got from the sign-up API. The interesting thing is, we have to use Firebase ID token, not the bearer tokens, because it doesn't work. It only works with Firebase tokens. Exploit number 5, full dump of collections and associated documents. So we discussed that Firebase provides cloud-based solution and it has a NoSQL database, right? So in a NoSQL database, we have collections, and inside collections, we have documents. So what we can do is we can call another Firestore API, and this is a particular endpoint, /v1/project/the database URL, database ID, /database is default, documents/users. Users is the collection ID. And if we pass, again, the same sign-up token that we receive from the sign-up API, we can dump the whole collection. It contains all the documents. It contains email addresses. It can be anything. Generally, applications store like email address, phone numbers, push tokens, everything. So this is the vulnerable request. So you need to update the project ID over here and the collection name. Another thing, in the authorization header, it uses bearer tokens. It doesn't use Firebase tokens for some reason. So it has to be a bearer over here. Another issue in this request is it has missing rate limiting. So you can brute force the collection names and you can just run an intruder and try to get the actual collection name. Only if you know the collection name, then you can get the documents. So this is one of the issues with Firebase itself. Another thing is to identify collection names. You can check the web code or the binary of the iOS application if they are using any different collections, and you can get you can dump the whole collections based on it. Exploit number 6, insecure Firestore rules to unauthorized read and modification of data. So this particular functionality is associated with the previous one, and here we will discuss why it happens, why there's a misconfiguration, why we were able to dump data in this particular request, why we were able to. So we will discuss that. So to understand that, first we need to understand what are Firestore rules. So there exists a file, firestore.rules, and it is a critical part of the Firebase security. So it defines who can access your Firebase database and how they can use that data. What it does is, first, it controls read and write access. So it determines which users can read data from or write to specific collections and documents. Second, it enforces conditions. So it uses expressions to define who can access a particular functionality based on user authentication. It should be admin or a regular user. It also defines the roles. It also performs data validation. And the third thing is it protects data in real time. So whenever you call, so in this particular request, when we are calling this endpoint, the Firestore rules are invoked, and they are validated if the rules are valid or not. Only then it will return the response. So coming back, and why it matters. So first thing is, if there are misconfigured rules, example, allow read and write if true, that means anyone can access it and write to the database. It can expose entire database to the public. Second is, weak rules can lead to unauthorized data access and data modifications, which actually what we call as privilege escalation. So let's take an example of what a vulnerable rule looks like. So to give a context, so this is a service where users can store their mobile push tokens. And push token is a service, the messages, the notification that you see on your device when your device is in a locked state, the messages are sent to the push tokens and the APNS delivers it to the device. So in this vulnerable rule, there are two things happening. First is the creation, which gives which creates a push token over here, and it checks if the user is authenticated, and it also validates if the request is by the authenticated user. So it checks the request body, which is the request.resource.data.user. This is from the request body, and this is the decoded ID token from where they have they get the authenticated user ID. They matches it, and they checks if the user is authenticated, it creates. So that's fine, right? There are no issues with that. But what about the allow update functionality? It checks if the user is authenticated, which is the right thing to do. And then it checks if the resource.data.user. Resource is a document that already exists on the database. So it checks if that resource was created by the authenticated user that is requesting it. So this is also fine, but do you think there is an issue with it? Anyone? No? The fix is, the issue was, when the user has created their document using the create service, it's their own document. The document belongs to the attacker, right? But the update functionality also checks if the resource, the document that is already exists on the database belongs to the authenticated user, which is again true. But what they can do is they can rewrite their own document and they can pass on the victim's user ID. And the fix was to add this line, this check, which is the request.resource.data.user, which again checks the request body if it's the same user who is updating it or not. So this would have fixed it. So yeah, that's pretty much I have for this talk. If there are any questions? No questions, I think. You have.
You said that all these issues happened due to misconfiguration, yes? So I wonder, are there any tools on the side of, say, Firebase or Google or Apple that maybe check for some misconfiguration like you demonstrated?
The best thing is to read documentations properly when you're integrating a third-party library. For example, if you are using integrating Firebase, you read the documentation, how validation works. If you're using any other third-party, such as sign in with Apple or log in with Google, you just need to check the documentation, how it works, because every documentation have a security document which mentions what issues can happen if you don't check these things. So it's really important to follow the documentation while integrating these third-party libraries.
Yeah, but maybe some automatic tools to check these rules.
I'm not aware of those tools, but if those are still present, there can be, you cannot depend on those external tools. You need to validate and check the documentation for a foolproof.
Yes, of course, but I think that these tools will be available, and if you are an expert in this, you maybe can develop something like this.
So the thing is, you can automate this stuff. You need to put checks, or you can do a static code analysis of the source code and see if these checks are available, present or not. If these are not, like that, cases will fail. But in the first place, you need to know these vulnerabilities exist. If you know these vulnerabilities exist, tools can be developed.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. Actually, previous question was about, is there a tool to automatically check make all checks for Firebase?
Okay.
So I actually made this one. I have on GitHub, it's called Firebase Tester.
Okay.
So currently I check for anonymous and authorization checks. So automatic sign up, and then with the session try to access database, write to database, and so on. But you mentioned collections. There is API where we can brute force collections, right?
Yeah.
Is there a REST API to write to collections?
Sorry?
So we can read brute force collections?
Yes, we can.
Like users, right?
Yes.
Can we write?
I'm not sure, because it's a GET request that I was trying to do, but that particular endpoint is vulnerable. If it supports post request, then it will be vulnerable, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
I actually tried also to research, but currently there was only JavaScript code, which allows to write, but it's only a solution for now. So I thought, is there a REST API as well? Okay, thank you. And one more question. One API you mentioned for storage bucket.
Yeah.
It requires authorization Firebase, especially, not Bearer. But actually I had a case where Bearer also worked.
Yeah, so there's a funny part. So sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. So it's a very random behavior across Firebase, different applications. I believe the legacy application supports Bearer, but the newer ones uses Firebase.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very good one. I actually will add the additional check to my tool for this case. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good finding.
Thank you. Thank you so much.